The most organized person I've ever met. This person thought of everything, every detail. Who doesn't want that person on their team? Nobody wanted to work with this person because that strength was dialed up so high that when things didn't go as planned, they couldn't adjust. They were very inflexible. Let's create what we call a purpose and a positive intent statement. Many of us get so worked up weeks, months before the conversation. We've already taken years of our life just worrying about a conversation that hasn't even happened.
Pivot in your confidence, career, and compensation with the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast every Monday and Thursday. Now get ready for a special interview curated just for you. 35 years of experience in people leadership, 18 spent as the Chief People Officer and EVP of Franklin Covey. I have Todd Davis here today, and that's just a small snippet of his resume. Welcome back to the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast, where we help tired and frustrated professionals pivot in their confidence, career, and compensation. So you get what you want, where you want to go faster, and doing the things you love and making the money you deserve. Before we start this interview, I need you to grab your notepad or a phone to take notes and hit that subscribe button and share this with someone today that needs to hear this. Welcome to the podcast, Todd. Thank you for coming to share with our audience today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great now. Thanks for inviting me, Joella.
Thank you so much for coming here. We're going to right in. You've spent the bulk of your career at Franklin Covey. To boot, how many years has that been altogether that you've been at Franklin Covey?
My 28th year this month. I started in July of 1996.
Congratulations. I won't date myself by saying how old I was at that point, nor will I date you. So for that person that may not know what Franklin Covey does, can you share with us who Franklin Covey is and what have they done for the world?
Absolutely. Thank you. So Franklin Covey, we're a global company. We specialize in leadership development and performance improvement. We're in over 160 countries around the world, and we have been in this leadership space for 40 years, 4 decades.
Wow, that's amazing. 4 decades. And you guys are a worldwide company. How many countries are you guys currently operating in?
So over 160. And have localized all of our world solutions into more than 25 different languages and cultures.
Oh, wow. So you can get access to Franklin Covey. Almost every corner of there got internet access and or workshops on site, correct?
Anywhere that it's legal.
Anywhere that it's
Yes.
legal. Love that disclaimer for the legal team. That's awesome. And for those that, are just getting to know Todd Davis for the first time, you're a best-selling author. Your book's called Get Better, 15 Proven Practices to Build Effective Relationships at Work, and Everyone Deserves to Be a Great Manager. What made you write that book?
Yeah, well, so the first book, Get Better, 15 Proven Practices to Build Effective Relationships at Work, we, along with our publisher, Simon & Schuster, thought, what a cool idea to have the chief people officer of the people company talk about, what is it that those who are real movers and shakers do in an organization? What are the behaviors? What are the habits? What are the things they do? And so because I had been was in the role for 18 years, I had this great position of being a fly on the wall, observing what those who are really masters at their relationships do. And so that was the impetus for that book. And then I was the co-author of Deserves a Great Manager, 6 Critical Practices for Leading a Team. And that was born out of a course that we already have about these 6 critical practices. And so I have 2 co-authors on that book, Victoria Roos Olson and Scott Miller. And the 3 of us who had all been in leadership for a long time realized, gosh, there were things that none of us ever got in, formal training when we were moved into our leadership role. So that was the impetus for that book.
Right. So the person that doesn't, gets promoted, right, from an individual contributor role to leading a team and becoming a great manager, right? There's no program for that. There's no true training that gets you like this textbook 1, 2, 3 to get you there, right? And I'm being facetious, right. But it's true.
No, you're exactly right. When I deliver keynotes on that book, Everyone Deserves a Great Manager, I share this fun analogy. I say, picture yourself getting in an airplane and the plane's taking off and you just close your eyes and all of a sudden you hear the pilot say, "Hey, thanks for flying with us today. I'm Todd. I'm your pilot. I don't have any training, but I have a real strong interest in flying. We'll kind of figure it out as we go along. Now, while that would never happen, hopefully, uh, and while it's not as dramatic, many of us are put into or are reporting to a leader who is a good person but never had any formal training, and they're just kind of figuring it out as they go along. So it's yeah, it's a very much needed book.
Yes, I think absolutely. And I think John Maxwell's also a curator of just thousands of leadership books because there isn't anything truly out there that prepares you for that moment, that situation, that organization, or that specific team that you're dealing with. So I've not read your book, but I know that it'll be on my list, as I hope it's on the list of some others to read as well. And then thinking about the building effective relationships at work, which I know you guys are working on a project at Franklin Covey now that we're going to talk about, that I think ties probably into this a little bit. But I'd love to hear more about the effective relationship, because I believe there's a couple things that we're put on this earth to do. And one of them is to be in relationship. Otherwise, there would only be one person down here, right?
That's a good
Right. I believe we're
point.
put on this earth to be in relationship. So I'd love to hear more about that book and maybe one or two of the 15 proven practices that you wrote about there.
I've heard so many different answers, but how long should my resume be? Listen, a one-page resume is ideal for candidates with less than 10 years experience. Now, if you have more experience, a two-page resume is absolutely acceptable. There's so many steps to creating a resume story that converts to getting your dream job. Sign up now for 5-Minute Career Hacks resume hacking services and let us help you right now. You even get a 1-hour consultation with our team.
You bet. Thank you again for the invitation to be here. It's fun, always fun to talk about things that I'm passionate about. So yeah, to your point, Jamila, th- unless you work in an organization where you are the only employee, the rest of us, all of us, get our results with and through others. And so when people hear, the focus on relationships, some cynical people might say, well, that's great. I'm glad that we want to focus on relationships, but I got a business to run. I got a revenue number to hit or whatever. Well, I value that, and we get our results with and through others. So those organizations and those teams that really focus on the nature of the relationships between people, they're the ones that make the biggest impact and are the ones that are continually achieving their goals, because everyone feels valued on that team. Everyone they can move, as Stephen M.R. Covey talks about, with the speed of trust. They can get things done that much quicker. And so these relationships, they are foundational to accomplishing all of our wildly important goals, as we call them. To share just a couple of the practices, what I mean, the very first practice is foundational. It's called wear glasses that work. And why I start there is because the way we see things, our paradigms, change or influence everything we do. If I'm a, if I am a micromanager, if I see my team is incompetent, okay, let's just say I see my team is incompetent. Well, then what kinds of things do I criticize? I hover over, I triple check everything, and this group is then just operating out of fear, not bringing any of their creativity to work, and we get these poor results. And then I look at the poor results as the manager, and I say, oh, see, I got to micromanage even more if I'm going to try and improve the results. And so it's all driven by these glasses that I'm wearing that are seen an incomplete paradigm. So that's the first practice, wear glasses that work. You told me I could share two. Let me share another one, because I'm
Please
passionate
do.
about all of them. Yeah, get your volume right. Get your volume right is another one of the practices. And it's not about how loud we're speaking, it's a strengths. And any strength, when dialed up too high, starts to work against us. I used to work with an incredible person, incredibly talented person, highly educated, had 3 degrees, the most organized person I've ever met. This person thought of everything, every detail. Who doesn't want that person on their team? Nobody wanted to work with this person, because that strength was dialed up so high that when things didn't go as planned, they couldn't adjust. They were very inflexible. And so I caution all of us to look at our strengths. And I've yet to see one that if it's dialed up too high, it actually starts to work against the very thing you're trying to achieve.
Ooh, that's good, Todd. And it makes me think about something someone shared with me once about every strength is a double edged sword, right?
Yeah.
And being
Yeah.
able to understand that it creates blind spots for you. So I absolutely love that one. So I'll be checking out those two books. Thank you for sharing those two nuggets, because I'm fully intrigued, and I think you guys did an incredible job of the titles of those 15 proven practices, because they're very relatable. I find when you deliver, and I'm sure you've seen this in your long, illustrious career of delivering learning and development, that I find when people can easily relate to what you're saying, they'll remember it, right? And
Yeah.
it'll have a bigger impact. So when you tell me I need to turn the volume down, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget
Well,
that, right?
I appreciate that. Yeah, because I've heard the double-edged sword metaphor as well, and it's a great one. And I don't want anyone to think, okay, well, so I shouldn't use that strength. No, use the strength, but just check how high you've got it dialed up. I'm a very I want to be that go-to guy, and so one of my
Yeah.
strengths is I will figure out how to do it for you. And so people come to me, but I end up saying yes to all these things, and I dial that up too high, and then all of a sudden I'm doing a B or a C job instead of on a lot of things instead of an A plus job on just a few things. So yeah, it's I'm challenging people to share with me one strength that you can't, that you could have so much of and it doesn't start to work against you, because it always does. It always works against you if you turn it up too high.
And there's definitely one. So I appreciate you sharing that. And we probably share a similarity there as being the go to. I brought a little A type in there as well. But it's just, there's a passion, number one, I think, that sits underneath that for helping others. And
Yeah.
I pride myself in being a servant leader. And so I think that's a component that also just puts accelerant on that being the go to person. At least for me, it does.
Yeah,
For sure.
I hear you. I hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So, with that, I'd love to kind of back up because we're kind of present day right now with the two books that you've authored and co-authored, as well as the work at Franklin Covey, your illustrious career with them. That's not even over yet, but like, what got you to Franklin Covey? I'd love to kind of understand your journey. What got you to Franklin Covey? And then what made you stay so long? Because gone are the days of people staying in roles for 30 years. Now, the estimate was a couple years ago when I was doing some research, the estimate was that you'll change jobs, at least 12 times in your career, but I think it's closer to 15 now. So how have you been able to do that, and what got you started with them?
You ask great questions. You should do this for a career. You're really
You
good at this.
think?
So I love this class. So 28 years ago, prior to my experience with Franklin Covey, I was in the medical industry. I recruited
Mm,
physicians and other medical personnel, and I did that for a number of years. And then I worked. A couple of friends and I, we started our own company as kind of a outsourcing company that companies could contract with for their human resource services. Now, I didn't have any human resource experience other than recruiting, but the recruiting I did in the medical industry was separate from the HR department in that
right.
company. So we were recruiting for I was recruiting for a bunch of different companies out in the area where I live, and Covey Leadership Center. This is prior to Covey merging with Franklin. They were using me as a contract recruiter to hire their consultants and their salespeople. And one day they came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to bring recruiting in house. Can you send us some people, some candidates that would be good recruitment managers for our company?" So I said, "Sure." And I had just about 6 months prior to that, I had read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective
Right.
People, Stephen R. Covey's best-selling,
Yeah.
all-time best-selling business book. And so I'm sending them resumes of some of my colleagues that I knew that were really good recruiters. And I thought, Todd, wait a minute. You loved that book. You love this company. Why don't you throw your hat in the ring? So I also said, hey, I'd also be interested in being considered for this. And fortunately, I interviewed and was selected to be the recruitment manager, a team of one, for the Covey Leadership Center back in 1996. And the awkward part of that was I had to then contact my friends who I had referred to them and say, hey, they went with another candidate. That was me.
Oh,
And
wow. What an interesting position to
it
be
was,
in.
yeah, I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, but it was a little bit of a difficult conversation. And so I started my career there and did recruitment for them, and then Covey merged with Franklin. And to your point, I had no. If you had asked me then, and are you going to be here for 28 years? I thought, heavens no! I'll do this for 4 or 5 years. I'll do something else. Well, we merged with Covey Leadership Center, merged with Franklin. I then moved into an innovations team role, a director of innovations, where we create all of our content and put our learning work sessions together. And I did that for many years. And then 19 and a half years ago, our CEO came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to interview for the chief people officer role." The current chief people officer was leaving. And I said, "Well, that's great, but I have no HR experience." And he said, I'm paraphrasing, that he said, "Well, we know, but we've noticed you're really good with people." I thought, okay. So I interviewed and I was selected, and then I immediately surrounded myself with the smartest HR people in the world, and did that for 18 years. You ask why I have stayed and don't leave. It is Many organizations have great cultures. It is an amazing culture at Franklin Covey. Our mission statement is to enable greatness in people and organizations everywhere. And in my previous conversation with you, Jamila, and getting a sense of what your podcast is about, it's really in line with a lot of what you talk about. There is greatness within everyone. And so to be with a company that is a part of that and helps people see their greatness and the contributions they can make, it's inspiring. I get up every day excited about what I do.
Man, that's amazing. The first thing I heard you say, which is something that we help people from a career strategy standpoint, as well as when we go talk to other organizations, this is the one thing that we talk about. No matter what the topic is, it always comes back to doing something that you love doing. And initially, you saw the opportunity and you were like, "Hey, I enjoy doing this. I'm going to apply too." And you got the job. And then the second thing I heard was that when the time came and someone saw something in you that you may or may not have seen in yourself, you weren't afraid to take the chance. And you did what you would have had to do, whether you felt like that's what you wanted or not. You surrounded yourself with an amazing team of people. Those two things, I think, whether that's personally or professionally in your next role or not, you have to do regardless. I think that's the lifeblood of what we do on earth, part of our purpose and passion. But I think that's so important, and you just encapsulated why you're still there, right?
Well, that was a great summary. I see what I need. I need your talent of summarizing things and saying things in more bite-sized bits than rambling on like I tend to do.
No, honestly, there's someone that's probably faced right now that's listening, that's in the situation, either wanting something that they love, might be afraid to try or do it because they don't have the experience or don't meet all the qualifications, right? And they just heard you share that and are now going to go apply for the job. Or they're going to accept the position and then go get a great team, right? I think most people, if they've gotten to the point where they're about to be promoted or want to be promoted, they know how to identify talent to some degree, and who's doing what well, right? And we can take it back. We can take it back to the playground. I played basketball coming up. After a few days playing at the same playground, you know who you want to pick on your team pretty quickly.
No, you're so spot on. This notion of picking the right team. A wise leader that I had once said to me something I will never forget, and that is that A's hire A pluses and B's hire C's, and that has stuck with me. And so meaning that if I'm an A player, I want to hire people smarter and even better than I am around me to surround me. If I'm a B player, I have this fear of somebody outshining me. And so I hire C's and D's. And that was my saving grace when I got put in this chief people officer role, because there were so many things about HR that I didn't know. So I hired a bunch of A pluses around me, and they're still A pluses. They're still way smarter than I am. And I thrive on that. I think a great leader is someone who doesn't know how to do everything, but she knows how, or he knows how to find the talent and surround themselves with that talent. So
I think that is it.
Yeah,
that's it. I know there's a billion definitions, but again, if you believe why we're all here together on this earth, then you would then equate that there's something powerful when people come together. Right. So if you can surround yourself with people, then I think whatever you're doing, you're going to be wildly successful. And I love sports analogies, and you see it in sports all the time. It's not always the most talented. It's the pieces that fit together well. Right.
Yeah.
So you see it all the time. So let's talk a little bit about this project that you all are working on, navigating difficult conversations, turning tension into progress. So this is a workshop that you guys are currently offering to the public, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's our newest release. We have many 20 almost 30 now award-winning solutions. The speed of trust, the 7 habits, the 5 choices to extraordinary productivity. We tend to like numbers a lot. This one doesn't have a number, but for a long time, many of our clients, and we have thousands of clients around the world, have said, "Do you have anything specific on how to address difficult situations?" I mean, we have senior leaders who are very uncomfortable doing this, let alone new time or first level leaders. And so we designed this 2.5 hour module. So it's not a full day work session, and it's taught online or in person on how to navigate difficult conversations and actually turn that tension that we all feel into progress.
So I've been in so many situations in my corporate career, mostly in retail. I've been in so many situations, and I don't know if it's a gift from God or what, but I've always been able to identify when someone that I was working for was uncomfortable sharing something with me. I don't know what it is about that, but I've always been able to identify it. Now, early in my career, I wasn't able to navigate or even communicate with the boss or the leader at the time to say, hey, it's okay. Whatever you need to say it, basically. I wasn't able to do that early in my career, but later on, towards the end of my corporate career, I was able to do that. So how would that particular workshop have helped me earlier in my career?
Well, you are wonderfully unique. There aren't a lot of people out there like Jamila Brown who are so have such emotional intelligence that they're the ones thinking, "Oh, I can tell this person is having a hard time coming up with what they want to say. I just want them to feel comfortable." That's wonderful. If every leader had people like you on their team, these difficult conversations wouldn't be difficult because you make it easy for people to talk. But what this course does, we have, and I'll just use myself as an example. So I had a team of 10 people, and there was a performance issue with one of them, and I'm thinking, oh man, this is a great person, but this thing they're doing is really holding them back, and it's kind of hurting our team. But I don't want to offend them. I'm worried about our relationship after I have the conversation. I'm worried about how they feel. Are they going to start to drop in other areas because now they feel like they're not measuring up? So all of these things, and I'm sharing that because I suspect your listeners can relate to all of that, going, oh, that's exactly where I am. We worry, most of us worry about the relationship after the conversation. How am I going to say this right? How are they not going to take it wrong? Is the conversation going to explode in the middle of it? So we take all of those things into consideration. We understand that emotions play a big part of this. Many of us get so worked up weeks, months before the conversation. We've already taken years of our life just worrying about a conversation that hasn't even happened. And so if we can first of all recognize that it's the emotions we're most concerned about, and then what we teach in the course, and we teach a very methodical way of how to do this, how do I balance courage and consideration when I begin the conversation and then throughout the conversation? Because we can start it out with that equal balance, but then things go crazy when emotions come up. And so we start with balancing courage. What is it that I need out of the conversation, and consideration? What is it that Jamila needs? What do I have to remember the position that she's in? And so that's the beginning of this process that we take learners through. And they actually, and you just cut me off because I'll go ahead and teach the course here. But we actually help them. They focus on a specific conversation that they've got coming up. And this isn't always a leader and a subordinate or an employee. Sometimes I've got to have a conversation with my boss, and I'm not sure how she's going to take it, or if she's going to think different of me in a bad way after that. Sometimes it can be just between two colleagues working together. And so we help participants create what we call a purpose and a positive intent statement. So get comfortable with, let's write it out. What is your purpose for having the conversation? Okay, now positive intent is, what do you want to make sure the person knows? So let me give you an example. I'll call this person Joe, and I'm going to talk with Joe about this performance issue. So the purpose and positive intent statement would be, hey, Joe, I appreciate you meeting with me today. I need to talk to you about a performance situation of yours that I'm really concerned about. But Joe, I want you to know my only intent in bringing up this conversation is because I care deeply about your success, and I want you to be wildly successful. So that's how I would begin the conversation. Doesn't make it easy, but it's a way to start the conversation. Most people don't know how to even start the conversation when it's difficult.
And just so the audience, I know they're taking notes right now because I encourage you guys to take notes at the very beginning. You said it was purpose, because I don't know if I heard, what are the three P's?
Purpose and positive intent. So
Positive intent. Okay,
two
perfect. Yep.
seconds, and I'm glad you asked that question, because many of us, and especially people in the learning and development space and the human resources space, we are so, and most human beings in general, we're so concerned about the emotions and the well-being of the person after the conversation that we start with the positive intent. And while that sounds good, how many times have you sat in a conversation? Well, you just gave an example, and the leader is talking. You're going, "What is she talking about?
Right.
Why don't we get to
Circles.
the point?" Yes, and it's because they're uncomfortable. And so we coach people, and I had to coach myself on this. Start with the purpose statement. Say, "Hey, I need to talk to you about an important issue. It's going to be difficult. It's about your performance, but I want you to know I only am having this conversation because I want you to be wildly successful." So always start with the purpose, and then the positive intent statement, the reinforcement.
So that's the tactical piece that you guys just got the gym on, this actual workshop, this actually you just got a gym, and like Todd just said, he could teach the whole class. I can tell you're super passionate about this, as you should be, because I can hear in this how this can help you in your personal relationships as well. So whether you're parenting with your spouse, whatever that may be, this doesn't just mean in the workplace. I know you're using a workplace example, but I know that this is applicable personally as well. So what sparked in my head as you were talking through the purpose and then the positive intent was the fear that sometimes I know people feel when they start the rambling or the, you can tell that they're uncomfortable. Do you guys discuss any of that in the workshop as far as why that's there? Do y'all discuss that?
We do. We talk about the emotion that's we ask people. So you don't have to share, anything too personal, but why are you anxious about this upcoming conversation? And people in the participant group will share, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. That's the number one thing that comes. I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I'll tell you, Jamila, I had an experience many years ago with a team member where I didn't want to hurt their feelings, and I kept putting off this discussion, putting it off. Finally, 6 months later, some of my other team members came to me and said, Todd, we have told you about this. This continues to go on. And I here I am, the leader. I was embarrassed, thinking, well, I was hoping it would just kind of go away. I didn't tell them that. I was thinking that. Finally, I met with this person, and I said to them, I have been so hesitant to bring this up because I don't want to damage our relationship. And then I went into the conversation. Well, you know what they told me? Yes, they reacted and they were emotional and all the things that I was worried about. But at the end, they said, Todd, can I tell you what I'm most offended by? And I said, tell me. That you knew about this for 6 months and didn't bring it up to me, even though we see it differently, that you let me flounder. And that was a huge lesson for me. And I thought, boy, here, while this came out of consideration, I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I actually did the least considerate thing possible, and that was to let it go on and on and on. So we remind people of that. And to your point, while most of my examples are from a work-related thing, but it can be between, siblings, it can between, spouses or partners or parents or whatever.
That's so good. And I'll tell you, that was the unlock for me professionally as well. So when I was leading people and I had a specific manager that I was leading, that I probably stunted their career growth by not telling them the thing that I needed to tell them. And I'll never forget this person. Of course, I've since apologized for not being where I needed to be in that point at that point in their career. But from that point forward, and I'll never forget it, anytime I feel that whatever that little physiological sensation is on the inside, rises up in you, that whatever that feeling when it rises up as you're thinking you need to have this conversation because it's been placed on your heart, in your spirit to have this conversation. At that point, I immediately think about their future.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Well,
take me out of the situation.
When you're sincere, and I've only known you in two different interactions now, but your sincerity comes through loud and clear. But if you're to the listeners, if you're sincere, while it's still gonna sting, we all have a difficult time hearing things we don't want to hear. If you care about me, it makes all the difference. It makes
Yeah.
all the difference. So don't put it off. You just remind me of something I want to share
Yeah.
that comes up in difficult conversations, or when we're having an awkward situation where people will, out of good reason or good intentions, will default to saying something like, "I know how you feel." Those words singe my ears now. Now I know the person means well. I know they mean
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
but I used to read I used to read an advice columnist. I laugh because you're this basketball coach and very athletic and all the talented. I am probably the least athletically talented person you would ever meet. And my mother reminded me when I was 10 years old, my friends are all out playing sports. I was reading this column. Her name was Ann Landers. I don't know if some of your
I think
older
I've
readers
heard.
will remember, but Ann Landers had an advice column in our paper, and it was a national column. And I remember at 10 years old, I'm paraphrasing, but she talked about this, saying to people, "I know how you feel." And she said, nobody knows how anybody else feels ever. We can, even if we've had a similar experience, if my father died and your father died, I still don't have the right to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I know how you feel. My dad died too." Well, that's great, but we had completely different relationships with our fathers. We don't, and so that has stuck with me forever. And especially in difficult conversations, I really resist, and I coach people and caution people, don't ever say, "I know how you feel." Now, what I say is, "Oh, Jamil, I'm so sorry. Jamil, I'm so sorry you're going through that. I have no idea how you feel, but I want you to know that I'm very sensitive to what you're going through right now." That tells that is, those are such welcome words to people. Don't assume you know how I feel. And I share that because really good people that I know think that's a way of showing compassion. And while you're trying to do that, it's actually not well received.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't always land well. You're absolutely right. And I think the best example is how you started that was when someone dies.
yeah,
It's difficult. It's very difficult, and what they could be in a different season of that at
that's
any
right.
given time, right?
Well,
It
or
could.
to the relevance of your podcast. Somebody loses their job, and this happened to me. And I said to someone many years ago, I said, "Oh, I am so sorry. I can't imagine how stressful now." And they said to me, "Well, sure you can. You lost your job before." I said, "I know, but every situation's different, and I don't want to pretend to assume that I know what you're going through right now." And it's just, you can feel this psychological air that you're giving people when you are just there to understand and not try and judge or assume, or tell them
Yeah,
how they feel.
I absolutely love that. And as we're wrapping up here, I always tell the audience the reason I love doing this is because obviously I'm a servant leader and I want to give because I feel like I've been blessed in such an amazing way in my career, good and bad, honestly, to learn the things that I've learned. And I feel it would be a crime for me not to share it. So that's one. But then the second reason why I enjoy doing this is because I learned something from every person that we bring on the podcast, or when I research for the individual episodes we do every Thursday on the podcast. I learned something, and you just taught me something so wonderful, and it's a gem that I'm going to follow away. So I appreciate you for that, Todd, and pouring into me today as well. And as we wrap up, number one, I want everyone to know, if it's an organization listening, if we got some HR managers listening, or individuals that want to take this specific workshop or other workshops from Franklin Covey, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, they can simply go to our website, which is, remember, it's franklincovey.com, FranklinCovey, franklincovey.com, and anything and everything they need will be right there. It's very easy to navigate.
Perfect, perfect. And if someone wants to connect with you, Todd, right? And I know you're a busy guy, you're all over and working for Franklin Covey, but how can they just send you a DM or reach out to you and thank you for what you shared on the podcast today?
Well, you're so kind, and first of all, I want to say how much I've learned from you. So you're
Thank you.
very kind to me, but I've learned a ton from you. I'm on LinkedIn, just under Todd Davis. They can also go to the Franklin Covey website that I just shared. I'm on their speakers bureau, and so there's a way to get a hold of me there too if they just go to franklincovey.com.
Perfect, perfect. And I always like to end the podcast. I know I didn't prepare you for this, but I always like to end the podcast by asking whoever I'm interviewing to leave the audience with 5 words. It could be a phrase, it could be a mantra, it could be something that you've learned over your career, or you just want them to remember about something you said today. So if they don't remember anything else, that they have these final 5 words from you. What would those words be, Todd, that you would share with the audience as we wrap up?
Wow, 5, and it can't be 3, and it can't be 6. It's
Hey,
got to be
if
5.
I always like to say 5 or less. So
Okay.
if you've got 1 or 2, I'm good with that as well.
Well, I would. I probably have one that's a few more than 5, so I'll shorten it somewhat and just say 2 words: relationships matter.
Oh, that's good.
Relationships matter.
What a culmination of the conversation that we've had today. I appreciate you so much. Relationships do matter, and I know we'll continue to have one beyond this episode airing to the world. And I appreciate the work that you're doing for so many. Franklin Covey has blessed me over the years in some of the trainings that I've done, so I appreciate it. And for anyone listening, I promise you it will not be a waste of your time. And this one is a 2.5-hour one that could change your life and change your relationship. So be sure to check that out. Thanks again, Todd, for being on the podcast. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And as I always end every episode, see you next time, and I love you. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed doing it for you. However, it doesn't have to end there. Come on over to our Facebook group community right now. You're going to get exclusive content that we weren't able to include in this episode as well as past episodes. We've got challenges, we've got research, we've got lives, you name it, all for you in bite-sized chunks so that you can continue this development journey. Go ahead, click the link right now in the description show notes, and we'll see you there.